In Section 5, you learned how to edit network objects and data. In this lesson, you will learn how to use the listing view to manage, sort, and evaluate network information. Let's begin by opening a list. Left-click on the Lists menu and you will notice that you can select any of the available network objects. We'll start with Nodes. Notice that our top menu bar changed. The graphic menu is now Layout, and our network editing modes on the left are now light gray and inactive. A list looks much like a spreadsheet or database view. Individual nodes are each row and attributes are columns. You may adjust the attributes using the Attribute Selector. Once you select the attributes in the listing you require, you can save the layout of the list by typing a name for the list in the drop-down next to the Attribute Selector. Attributes can be listed alphabetically, hierarchically, or in a standard list common to previous releases of the vZoom software. Any attribute may be assigned an alias as well. Once you've assigned the attributes for your listing, the layout is saved in the location you mapped with your project directories. It's then available in the drop-down. If you want to set a certain layout as the default for an object, select Layout in the top menu and click on Save as Standard Layout. You have the option to sort and evaluate data. Click on a column and then on the sort icon above the list. You have the option to sort either ascending or descending order. Also, you may click on the min, max, average, and sum icons to return these values for every column. These are helpful when mining data sets for network measures of effectiveness such as an average delay or vehicle miles traveled. Remember, if you forget what an icon does, you can always hover over it with your mouse and pause for information. Sometimes we want to view information both graphically and still have the list available. If you synchronize the list with the network editor, you may select an object in the list and have it marked in the network editor. We'll select an object and toggle to the network view. Our selected object is marked. We could edit it here or in the listing. Let's split the windows between the network and the list views. Now we'll click on different rows in the listing. Notice that when we have the listing synced with the network view repositions to the object we selected. In the listing, we'll select multiple objects by dragging with the left mouse held down. All of the objects selected in the list view are now marked in the network view. If we right-click the selected cells in the list, we have options to copy, paste, and delete cells. This works the same as most spreadsheet programs. Notice we have a Copy and Paste from Clipboard icon in the upper left of the listing layout window. One method of importing and exporting data is to use the clipboard. We'll click the Copy icon. This opens a dialog that tells us if the attribute data is legible in vZoom, how we want our data fields separated, the number of objects in our current list, and the identifier. We have two options that are both drop-down selections. The separator establishes how the data for each record will be divided. Depending on your needs, you may want to use space or semicolon, but tab is the default. The identifier is used by vZoom as a correspondence to the object in the listing being imported or exported. Next, click OK and open up a spreadsheet program like Excel. Click on the Paste from Clipboard icon and the data opens in Excel. Here we will modify some of the data. Now we will copy the sheet and toggle back to vZoom. We'll click on Paste in the node listing, and this opens a dialog that allows us to map data to existing attributes or create new attributes for items that are undefined in vZoom. Notice that vZoom tries to help you by automatically mapping source attribute identification to those that exist in vZoom. You may change the attribute being mapped by clicking on it and selecting the target attribute that will be populated from the source data. If an attribute doesn't exist, it will appear in the target attribute as 3 periods. Click on the new icon to the right of the target attribute, and this will open the User-Defined Attribute Creation dialog. You may also generate for source attributes not allocated by clicking on Generate. Using Generate is an easy way to establish new attributes, but be careful because this tool allows uniform generation of the type of attribute, such as a text or integer. Once all attributes to be read into VSUM are established, click OK. Notice our changed node data in the listing. Even though we only worked with nodes in our example, the same principles apply for all network objects. Let's create a filter for links. VSUM allows us to filter network objects based on attribute information. If you are familiar with databases, think of a filter in VSUM as a query. We can establish filters for one or more objects. To set a link filter, we right-click on the filter icon in the Types tab for the network object we want to filter, in this case, links. This dialog allows us to establish the attributes and parameters for active objects. If the filter is being applied, then it appears as dark red with a light background and the Use Filter checkbox is filled. We use Create to add a term to our filter. The gray under icon shows us the attribute being filtered, and if we click on it, then we are able to map to any link attribute in our version file for the link object. How we establish the value range in the last column of the filter dialog depends on the attribute. If we use the link type, then we select the defined link types by choosing the icon with the 3 periods on the right, then selecting the one we want. If we want several, we can hold the Shift key and set a series with mouse click for the beginning and end of our series, or one by one, holding the Control key down and clicking on the individual link types. Let's add speed to our filter. Notice that the value range is defined with 2 boxes. Here we'll put 30 in the box on the left and 40 on the right. This means that we're establishing that all values, including 30 and 40, are the items being filtered. Also notice that an operation term is in the left column. The logical operators are AND and OR. If AND is selected, then the criteria for the previous term and the current term must both be satisfied for the link to be active. If OR is selected, the link will be active if either criteria is met. We can see the application of the filter before we accept it by using the preview icon at the bottom. Once we select OK, then we accept the filter settings and this dialog closes. Cancel returns us to the prior settings and Initialize clears all the terms in the filter dialog. Let's click on Preview and take a moment to look at what happens. One last item in the filter dialog is the complement feature. Think of complement as a photo negative. By checking the box for complement in the upper left, all terms are complemented, and this makes active each of the objects but the ones that meet the filter criteria. We'll click Preview to see the change. Complement works term by term as well. Uncheck the complement box and click on the complement box in the second column for the speeds. Preview and click OK. Notice the objects which are active. Now that we've seen how filtering works in the network area, let's look at filtering in the listing view. Select Lists, then choose Links. Click on the filter icon next to the Layout drop-down. Only the objects that are active are part of the list. Observe the count in the upper left as we toggle the filter icon. We can filter and then edit sets of data here and know we are only changing items or exporting data that meet certain criteria we've established in the filters. We may want to apply the same filtering criteria again. To save a filter, go to File, then choose Save As. Select Filter, click OK, give your file a name, and choose Save. You can open a filter by choosing Open, Filter, and selecting the filter you want to apply. Filters may be opened and initialized in the Calculate procedures. Go to Calculate, Procedures, Operations, select Create, navigate to Miscellaneous, and choose Read Filter or Initialize all filter settings. Last, let's look at statistics for the application of filter criteria. Go to Extras and select Program Status. Choose the Base Network tab. The window displays information about the application of filters and the number of objects that are active, passive, selected, and the total number of objects. The Public Transport Network tab shows the same data for the transit network. To create a user-defined attribute in vZoom, choose the Network menu and then select User-Defined Attributes. This dialog is where we create, modify, and delete UDAs. First, we need to select the network object we want to create an attribute for. We'll choose Links for our example. The listing of network objects now applies to those for links. Let's select a row and click on Edit. Here we can modify the attribute. We may change any item, except for the attribute ID, which is locked after the attribute is created. We'll cancel, return to the previous dialog, and click Create. Here we establish the parameters and name for our attribute. We may enter any name for an attribute ID, but it may not begin with a number or special character and may not contain spaces. We'll enter TWLTL in the ID, code, and name fields. In comment, we'll type in two-way left turn lane. In the Type drop-down, we see that we have several options for the data. In this case, we select Bool with a default value of 0. We selected this because we want to flag links that have a center turn lane for link capacity adjustment, and we only need on or off. We select OK and then see our attribute in the link UDA listing. Click OK once more to accept the modifications and close the dialog. To see our attribute, we'll choose the link object in the network view and edit a link. Next, we'll go to the User tab and click Show All. Our new attribute is a checkbox. Our last data management lesson shows us how to migrate data in and out of a database. First, select File Import and choose Database. Here you select either a Microsoft Access or SQL database format. Navigate to the file and click Open. Then map data from the database to the vZoom attributes. To save data to a database, you can either save for a specific object and choose the database icon in the listing view, but more commonly we will go to File, Export, and select Database, and choose the format we want for our output, and then map the items we want to save in the database.